Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Ganavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Ganavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Ganavallabha Jai Gopi Radha Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandanam Rajadandaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text 9, 219. Parinishthitaha api nedgunye uttama shloka lilaya hita chetaha rajarshe akyanam yat aditavan parinishthitope Pinirgunya Uttamaślokalilaya Rita Chetara Jalshe Adyanam Yadaditavan Parinishthito Pinirgunya Uttamaślokalilaya Rihita Chetara Jalshe Akyanam Yadaditavan Parinishthitopi Nirgunya Uttamaślokalilaya Grihita Chetara Jarshe Adyanam Yadaditavan Parinishthitopi Uttama-shloka-leelaya Grihita-cheta rajarashe Akyanam yad-aditavan Parinishthitopi nirgunya Uttama-shloka-leelaya Grihita-cheta rajarashe Akyanam yad-aditavan Parinishthitopi nirgunya Uttama-shloka-leelaya Grihita-cheta rajarashe Akyanam yad-aditavan Parinishthitaha fully realized Api in spite of Nirgunye and transcendence Uttama enlightened Shloka verse Lilaya by the pastimes Rihita being attracted Chitaha attention Rajarshe O saintly king Akyanam delineation Yat that Aditavan, I have studied translation and purport as the Andre C.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Ki Jai. O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses. Purport: the absolute truth is realized as the impersonal Brahman at the first instance by philosophical speculation, and later as the supersoul by further progress of transcendental knowledge. But if, by the grace of the Lord, an impersonalist is enlightened by the superior statements of Srimad Bhagavatam, he is also converted into a transcendental devotee of the personality of Godhead. With a poor fund of knowledge, we cannot adjust to the idea of the personality of the Absolute Truth, and the personal activities of the Lord are deplored by the less intelligent impersonalists. But reasons and arguments together with the transcendental process of approaching the Absolute Truth help even the staunch impersonalist to become attracted by the personal activities of the Lord. A person like Shukadeva Goswami cannot be attracted by any mundane activity, but when such a devotee is convinced by a superior method, he is certainly attracted by the transcendental activities of the Lord. The Lord is transcendental, as are his activities. He is neither inactive nor impersonal. Om Adinath Vinashavakaya Chakshurunritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Vishnupada Krishna Prasthaya Gutave Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Dinamani. Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pachamini Nirvishesha Srimad Paschati Vishataya. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dear devotees, for joining in person and online. Translation: O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses. Here's Shukadeva Goswami is responding to Maharaj Parikshit's inquiries about how to die, basically. And Shukadeva Goswami in the previous verse has pointed out that of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of all the Vedic literature combined. And therefore, one simply need to study maybe some facts about the Puranas. There's 400,000 verses total, and Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses. And this is considered the essence. This is the Bhagavad Gita has the Chatur Shloki. So we read these 4 verses, 10, 8 to 11. And similarly, if we just read the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's considered the essence of all Vedas, Puranas specifically. And that alone. And here it's mentioned by Shukadeva Goswami, even though situated perfectly in transcendence, he was still attracted by the pastimes of the Lord, specifically described by enlightened verses. And this is further, this is substantiated here in Bhagavad Gita 10.9, where Krishna says, Machitta Madgata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam Katayantas Chamam Nityam Tushyanti Charamanti Charamanti. They take pleasure. The thoughts, translation, the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Few things from the purport. Pure devotees, whose characteristics are mentioned here, engage themselves fully in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Their minds cannot be diverted from the lotus feet of Krishna. Their talks are solely on the transcendental subjects. The symptoms of the pure devotees are described in this verse specifically. Devotees of the Supreme Lord are 24 hours daily engaged in glorifying the qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Their hearts and souls are constantly submerged in Krishna, and they take pleasure in discussing him with other devotees. Here we see the verse of the day, delineation of the pastimes of the Lord is described by enlightened verses. There's this parallel verse here. Moving on to a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that supports this is 2.3.10. Akama sarva kama va moksha kama udharati tivrena bhakti yogena yajita purusham. This is specifically in relation to different types of people that may have no desires or many desires or devotional desires. It states a person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole Personality of Godhead. The second paragraph, I'm skimmed through and go through the fourth. Udharati means one who has a broader outlook. People with desires for material enjoyment worship small demigods, and such intelligence is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita, specifically in 7.10. Now, here it states, under the circumstances, one with a broader outlook, even with the desire for material enjoyment or for liberation, should take to the worship of the Lord directly. And everyone, whether akama or sakama or mokshakama, no desires, all desires, or liberation is desired, should worship the Lord with great expedience. It means conveniently. This implies that bhakti yoga may be perfectly administered without any mixture of karma and jnana. As the unmixed sun ray is very forceful and is therefore called tivra, similarly unmixed bhakti yoga of hearing, chanting, etc. may be performed by one and all regardless of inner motive. And Krishna is known as Uttamam Pavitram, he's ultimately pure, and therefore whatever stage of life one simply offer worship as to the best of their ability, and in due course of time they'll be purified. One will be purified. There's a verse here that directed in Bhagavad Gita 7.20, which I didn't read, but I reference the verse that Prabhupada did. Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila 5.142, and this is to compare and contrast any people that are not worshiping Krishna directly. Ekale Ishvara Krishna Arasabhya Bhaktya Yare Yache Nachaya Setaiche Kare Nritya. Translation: Lord Krishna alone is the supreme controller, and all others are his servants. They dance as he makes them do so. It reminds me of two things here when Prabhupada used to say about a dog. You can either be a stray dog, if you know India. The stray dog has so much mange. When we were there last month, those poor dogs. And even the puppies too, the little ones, just on the side of the road, they already have mange and they're searching for different scraps and so forth. I saw 5 domesticated dogs while I was there in 3 weeks. And those ones are trotting very happily. They have nice coats, they have a collar and leash, and the master is leading them. That similarly, one can be a stray dog and have to fend for themselves, or one can be Krishna's dog, and the master takes care of him. And this verse here is supporting all others are his servants. So simply become the servant of Krishna is the essence of that verse, that portion. In 2:111, anyone who chants Hare Krishna benefits, auspicious for materialists and personalists and the self-realized. Again, coming back to the verse, only delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, Sarva Kama, Akama, Moksha Kama, doesn't matter. Simply find a way to become absorbed somehow or other. Prabhupada would often say. And I want to now kind of switch gears to Adi Leela in relation to this verse, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy conversation where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Lord himself, yet he's still questioning Ramananda Roy. And a few of them I'll mention. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu starts with, Ramananda, please tell me of different types of education that is available in society, which education is considered the most perfect? Yesterday out when we were in Santa Cruz, there was two students from UC Santa Cruz, prestigious institution, and they were walking by very nonchalantly. And I asked them just to accept some books, and they said, no, we're good. Kind of like very proud. So I just told them real quick how there's a difference of education, material and spiritual. And my Guru Maharaj would reference Prabhupada at MIT in this regard, that he went there, did Prabhupada, and it's considered very prestigious. Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And there Prabhupada would ask, where is that department that shows us the difference between a living body and a dead body? Where is that such field of knowledge? There is no reply. And therefore in Sri Ishopanishad it states that the wise have concluded by achieving one result ends in nescience, and achieving another result ends in immortality, essentially, or true knowledge. And therefore, in Bhagavad Gita 9.2, it says, Raja Vidya Raja Guyam, Krishna states himself that this is the king of all education. And it's also considered Bhagavad Gita the Vedic intelligence. And therefore, anything material in and of itself is not considered real knowledge. And it must be simultaneously cultivated with spiritual knowledge. Anything does not lead us to our regaining our relationship with the Supreme Lord, in other words, saving us from birth and death. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has mentioned in this connection that material knowledge is like a heavy turban. You see the Siddharjis walking around, and even the young ones too, they have a nice little turban. He said it, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said it's likened to a heavy turban, material knowledge of itself, because if one is in a river, then the turban weighs him down faster than if he didn't have it. That's like material knowledge. Of it by itself, it just weighs the individual down in various ways. False pride, false identification, etc. Mundane adorations, so forth. There's a long list, and I'm just going to skim through them. In the Ishopanishad 10, Prabhupada gives really beautiful practical instructions. I need practical instructions as well. The wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge, and that a different result is obtained by the culture of nescience. Prabhupada purports here as relation related to Bhagavad Gita 13:8 through 12, that this is the process of cultivating knowledge actually. One should become a perfect gentleman and learn to give proper respect to others. Now we know this verse.
That's wrong.
Ishopanishad 10 purport.
I think that's there's stuff that was Prabhupada gives in the purport.
Bhagavad Gita 13:8 through 12. Yeah. So gentleman and give respect properly. Two, not pose oneself as a religionist simply for name and fame. That's also referenced in Bhagavad Gita. Vidya Achara. Dwelling internally on sense objects, but yet externally posing oneself as a religionist. Three, one should not become a source of anxiety to others by the actions of his body, thoughts of his mind, or by his words. Bhagavad Gita purport, Prabhupada says that gravity in thought is very important. Gravity in thought means to be very introspective, contemplate at a deep level. Or one should learn forbearance even in the face of propagation from others. Vedas. 5. One should learn to avoid duplicity in his dealings with others. In other words, straightforwardness. 6. One should search out a bona fide spiritual master who can lead him gradually to the stage of pure spiritual realization and submit himself to the spiritual master service and relevant question. That's also in the Bhagavad Gita 434. 7. In order to approach the platform of self-realization, one must follow the regulated principles enjoined in the revealed scriptures. 8. One must be fixed in the tenets of the revealed scriptures. Tenets means the principles. I'm skimming through for the sake of time. 9. One should completely refrain from practices which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. 10. One should not accept more than he requires for the maintenance of the body. Ishavasya Midam Samlam, this verse. 11. One should not falsely identify himself with the gross material body, nor should one consider those who are related to his body to be his own. As Grace Radhesham Prabhu said, give the body to relatives, but give the heart to Krishna. This is a practical way that one can go about this principle. 12. One should always remember that as long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of repeated birth, old age, disease, and death. There is no use in making plans to get rid of these miseries of the material body. The best course is to find out the means by which one may regain his spiritual identity. 13. One should not be attached to more than the necessities of life required for spiritual advancement. Ajivita, that's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Self-preservation, just keep the body and soul together nicely to engage in service. 14. One should not be more attached to wife, children, and home than the revealed scriptures ordain. Prabhupada wrote in this regard that when he was getting many realizations, he said, where is my family? Where is my wife? Where is my children? All that's left is a list of names. 15. One should not be happy or distressed over desirables and undesirables, knowing that such feelings are just created by the mind. Icha and dvesha, wanting something and rejecting something. 16. One should become an unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and serve him with rapt attention. Yesterday, His Grace from Ram Roy Prabhu mentioned in regards to Srila Prabhupada that when young, one should preach vigorously, and then when one is in old age, then he can retire and Vrindavan. I was very inspired by that.
Prabhupada never did that.
Pardon?
Prabhupada never did that.
He never did that, but he instructed it. Or this do as I say.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
He also said that Prabhupada didn't
Do that. It sounds like a good deal to me. Prabhupada also did say one should work very hard for Krishna all day and then dishonor some prasad in the evening. 17. One should develop a liking for residence in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere favorable for spiritual culture. And one should avoid congested places where non-devotees congregate. Yes, no more lawn programs that you see precluding. 18. Last one. One should become a scientist or philosopher and conduct research into spiritual knowledge, recognizing that spiritual knowledge is permanent, whereas material knowledge ends with the death of the body. No endurance of the body. And then last part here. These 18 items combine to form a gradual process by which real knowledge can be developed. Except for these, all other methods are considered to be in the category of innocence. And they're likened to an ass by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I didn't see too many donkeys in India. I saw more horses and cows and a few camels, but there were a few donkeys, and they're considered beasts of burden because they just work very hard with a little reward. It's very common. Therefore, that spiritual knowledge is considered the best. And then the second question Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked from Ananda is, of all types of glorious activities, which activity is the most glorious? And the reply was the activities of the devotees of the Lord. And that generally speaking, the devotees of the Lord are recognized. For example, who's the richest man in India? That's the person. Another person could be Mukesh Ambani, the same person.
Yeah.
Krishna Ambani. It's net worth of 110 billion plus. And in America, it's Elon Musk, 200 billion plus. It's yeah, at least. And that's some people know that enough generally, but if we take Prabhupada, for example, people know Prabhupada. If they take Lord Christ, for example, he's infiltrated just basically everywhere, practically speaking. So this way, actually, the devotees of the Lord are more glorious. And those that are materially very affluent, that ends with the death of the body, as just mentioned before. Therefore, the activities of the Lord, the devotees of the Lord are most glorious. The third question is, of all types of distress, which is most painful? And the reply was a separation of the devotees. In this regard, lava mantra, that to just less than a second, less than a moment's time, with the saintly personality actually can perfect one's life because they plant the seed of devotional service. And I've heard that before a Dausha, before this preliminary faith that leads to association with the devotees, that one unknowingly has gotten a favor from sadhu or from Maharaj, and therefore that's how actually it starts. If anyone knows more about this, is it Adashraddha or is it that some Agyata Sukriti is there? Does anyone know for certain? I've heard both. Yeah, okay.
The combination.
Combination. Yeah. And therefore Narottam Das Thakur said it's actually better to live in a cage with a lion than to live in separation of devotees. And Prabhupada is mentioned because if one tries to live on their own, supposedly cultivating spiritual practice and knowledge, that they just think of women and money actually. Mm. So therefore it's not recommended for generally speaking. And the fourth question is asked, of all types of liberated people, which is the best? And the reply was one who has an attraction for Radha and Krishna. This Adi Rasa, the original, they call sex psychology, Prabhupada is translated. It means that the essence of the the interaction of two personalities coming together, even in the mundane world. We have this desire for relationship that's just an original reflection of our relationship with Krishna, Adi Rasa, the original juice that comes from that. And Rupa Goswami mentions this in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-187, that one who is engaged in transcendental service to the Lord, he is already considered liberated, even if one is in this material world. Prabhupada mentioned that there's two types of happy people in the world. One is the crazy person, and two, one who is actually absorbed in Krishna consciousness. These are the two types of happiness found. And the first one is illusory. It's not real happiness. It's likened to being dunked underwater, drowned, and then coming up momentarily gasping for air, and then being dunked again. Therefore, it's not recommended. It's actually a source of misery. Last question, which I'll close with and then open up for discussion, is which song is the best of all the songs? Which song is the best? And Ramananda Roy Prabhu said, that song which describes the glories of the Lord. We sing this Jaya Radha Madhava. We'll do that whole song. But that easy. Any song that describes and glorifies the Lord. There are other questions. It'll be summarized real quick. Yeah. The question is in reply to Maharaj Parikshit here. The reply is, O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses. Actually, Krishna is attractive for everyone. It's just a matter of realization. And oftentimes it's said the sugar cane, you bite anywhere in the sugar cane, it's actually relishable. But if one has jaundice or this abnormality of bile secretion, then bitterness covers the tongue. And one cannot taste. But to speak of relishing, the Srimad Bhagavatam is considered the essence of all Vedic literatures. And one simply needs to study the 18,000 verses that are found there. In whatever position of life, no desires, all desires, liberation desires, simply approach and serve the Lord, worship the Lord. Because it states that Tesham Satayutanam Bhajatam Pritipurpakam Dami Buddhi Yogam Tani Namamu Payanti, that to those that are trying their best, level best, that intelligence comes personally from Krishna. And in due course of time they approach him. How? By the torchlight or the lamp of knowledge destroys the ignorance within the heart. Krishna alone is the ultimate controller. Everyone else is servants, including the demigods. Even the self-realized are attracted by Krishna. And then we went over the questions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes into Ramananda Rai, which we just heard. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. I live to be corrected. Questions, reflections, friendly challenges.
So, regarding that point about seclusion, that one should be in seclusion. And at the same time, we say we should have the devotees not in separation. So, how do we reconcile that?
Seclusion with devotees.
Could you read
That's what I
that
understand.
issue that you read?
Viviktadesha Sevita.
Yeah, that is, you read the issue Prakur, that item about.
Yeah. one should develop a liking for residence in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere favorable for spiritual culture. And one should avoid congested places.
Yeah. And I feel yeah, what's the balance? That's what I'm asking. Yeah, of course we want to be with devotees, but what's the right balance? Because one needs time for reflection. See, just like when we go out, we take some time to. We don't want to go to meet with the non-devotee. We are not going there for. We went to UC Berkeley not to get their association, but we went there to give them some harina.
Yeah.
But we are doing this in lot as well.
Yeah.
So we have some balance between outside and inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what's the balance between solitude and association of devotees?
I haven't found any scripture that states a specific standard. It seems to be personalized, that everyone needs some amount of healthy isolation. And because even though we're all social beings and we can't avoid it, there is a certain amount. And it can be very healthy also. That's mentioned also in the Bhagavad Gita, somewhat in relation to this, that a recreation should also be there. Have a little bit of clean fun and go to the beach, go into the woods, whatever it might be. To do so with Krishna in mind, not just solely for seeing as a tourist would. His Grace Vishesh Maharaj mentioned this in India. Someone said, "What if I go to Abu Dhabi?" Now, is that considered selfish? Or if I'm going to give Krishna to people, is that different? And he said yes. In terms of balance of being alone, secluded, and being with association with others, and then giving Krishna to others, I have found it to be different for everyone. I don't see a standard, but if anyone has a reference to Shastra specifically about it.
Yeah, as you said, it's quite individual. It depends on the role a person is playing. Yeah, it depends on your role, but even within one's 24 hours, let's say life of a devotee, particularly with this solitude, that means morning program. We are together, but actually we are dealing exclusively with Krishna, Krishna's holy name, chanting. Of course, it's Sangha, but it's Sangha with Krishna. Of course, we offer obeisances to each other after our art, but we are not dealing so much with each other. Alright?
Yes.
Even here in class, we are dwelling on metaphysical, transcendental topics. So like that, pretty much our whole morning program is solitude with devotees, which is very good. But for some deep study, I find being alone much more conducive than being with others. So practically, we do have solitude. It's the morning program, and then we afternoon cognac and take a little nice. It's very important. Otherwise, if you just go on surfing and surfing waves, even with devotees, you kind of lose the proper perspective. If you spend it in the morning hours, just now what's happening in this and that. I mean, pretty much all of us here, we know if you do that, you are gambling with your day. Just kind of, you are giving out your rounds and, for things which are not essential. So I think this solitude is really important, but longer terms we shouldn't plan things. Just living alone, down the road is much better. She knows that she was always around the parties.
Yes.
I mean, previously I was discussing with other devotees about this to teach from here to it's pretty much most of a lot of these things we do every day if you properly follow the program service. And even if you, let's say, go to Berkeley, just out of the passionate people, but we are going there as a service, and it's kind of regulated. It's not that we do well there. It's our natural kind of things. Actually, we don't feel natural. It's austerity.
So that verse from the chapter was saying also that even if one has all desires, one should also worship Spirit responding Bhagavatam. So is something that we can preach to people who are not ready to fully surrender? Can we like kind of coax them like, or you desire a lot of money, so therefore you should become a devotee? Is that like a proper way to preach to somebody?
His Grace Vijay Prabhu did that. He said he met in transit somewhere a very rich person, and he told him, yeah, you should renounce everything and just move to India. Do you remember this? He told this story a while ago, and the gentleman actually did that. It seems an exception because generally people are averse to it because they're absorbed in that conception of life. In my experience, you get a real feeling for where they're at when you're having the interaction. If you feel like you can pour something in, so to say, then why not see where they're at? We're doing it anyway. There's a concept called in psychology called thin slicing. It means that in a very short amount of time, we're constantly analyzing what's going on and getting feedback and trying to understand, okay, where this person is. We do that every time with book distribution, do we not? We make some interaction happen, and then in the moment we're observing facial expressions, bodily movements, tone of voice, choice of words. What is their level of interest? And based on the culmination of all these things, then we continue the conversation or we don't, or they do or they don't. It's in my experience, it's possible. It hasn't happened for me like that, but His Grace Vijay Prabhu told this story. It seems one has to assess in the moment and see if if you feel they're really open, perhaps. Otherwise, it becomes an offense to the holy name, trying to convince the faithless of the glories of the holy name. You find it's a delicate situation.
It looks like the movie did that with the Lord Maharaj. Of course, if you first said, I got so angry, let's go home and be happy. But then the Lord said, if you're not gonna help me get out of my way, I'll find my way. You don't know when you were appreciating his determination, then he said, okay, we can do also that. Like in medicine, I believe that's also, you can do two opposite things to achieve the same goal. For example, if you have some disease, you can take Ayurveda, like this and that, a whole lot of things. And you can take Western medicine, which is kind of quite poisonous. But you can recover. if you really follow this one, you can survive and even thrive after that. So it looks like the devotees do different things. I mean, Narada Muni is quite a renounced person, so when he realized there was determination, he said, yeah, actually, it would be good for you to just worship the Supreme Lord, and this is the method, which is quite austere. You know. I think some people they do some kind of black magic to attract partners, to make money, to influence people. You know, can just tell them, yeah, maybe just follow one program. For 4 till 8:30. We'll see. But as well, this your Supreme Lord that he can give you the whole planet. There are many rich people, but now can own Elon Musk doesn't own the whole planet. So if you want to take man to own the whole planet, we can worship Supreme Lord and see how it works. That's what Dhruva got. People with land. Just not destroyed during this evolution of the universe. Quantum machine. But of course, he didn't like talking about it. Let's get try to yeah, because it looks like it both works. Just like Rupa and Sanatana, they were fed up with working for Muslim government. You know, that the Jews wanted to join. So he told him, well, you should be like a woman that has time. Certainly, you just do your things, but internally cultivate faith. Pretty much we said same things. Muslim in Iran, like this. But that's like temporary method. Probably in one class he said that you know, a woman having a partner, that's not like stable situation. It's actually very unstable. So eventually, if she just continues with that, she'll end up running away with the partner. So pretty much that's what happened in Lupas and Adinath. That's the goal. Our goal is not to find balance, you know, because the whole material world is out of balance. So temporarily we make balance. We do it and trees, but worship Krishna. But eventually we want to just be full-time devotee eternal. Just Krishna's pastimes. You know, just worship Krishna's pastimes and stay in material life. Children, British nonsense. So there. Yeah, that's
I really appreciate it. Overtime. Manchakapatmusha, Kripasanya Devcha, Patitanam, Pavane, Bioflesh, Radio, and Srimad Bhagavatam, Ki Jai, Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Adinath Krishna Prabhu ki jai.
For joining online.
We gave such a good class that my jacket got blocked. I can't be open.
Thank you for appreciate it.
Oh, it's open.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Prabhu. We missed your association.
When is still moving to Malta?
Satwit Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Moving